to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds.
And for freedom of speech.
Hello, I'm Paul Obitelli and welcome to another edition of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. Our talks include news, conspiracy, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion and much more. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone who'd like to contact us and give some feedback, maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, you can email us info@thatalks.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and many other podcast directories out there. Hello everyone, thanks for joining me again here on THA Talks. We are officially no longer a member of the European Union. Yesterday at 11 p.m, the UK left the European Union, and we now enter a transition period of about 11 months where we will continue to function as we have been with trade and regulations for a transition period before we enter 2021, where we will be functioning completely independently. So it's not over yet. We've got a lot of trade deals that are going to be negotiated this year, as well as the big one with the EU. Whether that manifests or not, we shall find out. But it's happened. We are no longer EU members. We no longer have any representation in the EU. So it's done. The Remainerism didn't get to stop it. They might still get to sabotage it. We may still get let down by our government, who proves again to be weasels. I'm kind of optimistic and hopeful that they've at least, even if they are corrupt, they've learnt the lesson that they can't really get past this one. I'd like to think that, but we'll soon find out. So it's not over yet, but we've certainly jumped a big hurdle, and at least this attack on democracy, it hasn't won. You know, whatever happens now, the referendum was honoured. We have left, and that's very important in my opinion. So that in itself has kept the democratic integrity of the country intact. So we will obviously be covering more Brexit stuff over this year, I'm sure. We will be covering another subject today with John White on the show, although I'm sure we've got plenty to talk about with various things. But without any further ado, how are you doing, John?
Hello, Paul. Oh, hello, THA. Well, I'm fresh from my travels in the time vortex at the moment, and here we are. We have just passed a day of history. Brexit has happened.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was at Parliament Square. Loads of people. It was absolutely heaving down there, and it was such a great atmosphere. And lots of work still to be done, but at least we've crossed that line. You know, it's done, and hopefully people will just look forward and stop arguing about it now.
I hope so, Paul. I do. I mean, what an incredible journey it's been to get to this point.
Yeah.
Who would have thought it would have taken all of that, to get this over the line? But we have done it, and we have proved that the people, united, knowing their own minds, not buying into the lies, the propaganda, the attempts to divide and rule and weaken our resolve, we have shown who we as a nation really are. And I think we have lit a beacon for freedom and democracy, real freedom and democracy, not fake corporate governance masquerading as democracy, but real people power. And we all should be proud, those of us who took part in any level of campaigning, and some of us did many, many years of campaigning to make this happen. We all should be proud of what we have done. And now it's for us to cement this into the history books and to support the current government to deliver.
Yeah. I think the important thing now is we know we've got the opportunity. We're going to be investing no more into the EU. We've just got to all pull together as a country and make sure that we can maintain what we do and be a strong country from here forward. I think that's quite a simple task, isn't it? Maybe not an easy task, but a simple task.
Quite a shakeout this year, especially with the EU. I think we're going to see a whole different, much more positive, much more can-do tune out of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. But we're not going to, this isn't actually a Brexit show. We're going to touch on, you've been in the middle of a big campaign with this Doctor Who stuff, and it's heating up. And you want to get more people involved, and that's what we're talking about.
Going on right now. Yeah. I am fresh from my memory, where I have been busy making memes and making petition updates and everything else on behalf of the Not My Doctor Who campaign.
So have you got any new developments? Anything exciting?
Well, I mean, let's kind of recap on the whole position, really, and then I think this is really interesting. From a point of view of perspectives of what happens when an info warrior meets geeks, trying to create energy for a cause. So look, we have discussed Doctor Who more than once on this show now. We did a special back in the summer. Where we talked about this feminist agenda for Doctor Who and what we discovered through this group of feminists' own carelessness, and that is very much still an issue with what we are doing. But the principal thing that we're doing is we have a change.org petition. And what we're doing is we want to get as many signatures on that petition as possible. Of course, everybody's heard this routine all over before. But it's not just that we are impotently going to demand the BBC do something. Because the more support we get for the ordinary people and what they've had to go through to stay a fan of Doctor Who over the last 18 months when it's been horrifically toxic, especially on the social media. A key part of this is standing up to the kind of cyberbullying of perfectly ordinary people who just happen to have not been convinced by the direction that a radical bunch of feminists have taken a science fiction show in. Core heavens, who could blame them? But it's been a terrible... And it's still going on now. The Doctor Who fandom on social media, especially those who are supporting this current era of the show, have become so reactionary. I mean, you know what they get like, but it is like that, and probably the worst I've ever seen it. And one of the things that we're doing in Not My Doctor Who, yes, we're spotlighting this clique of writers. That is part of what we're doing, but we're also spotlighting much more the general cyberbullying which has gone on. And so this is also something we want to get redress from the BBC over, not just what's happening on screen and the awful scripts and the bad acting and the rest of that, but actually what's been happening in the community of people who like Doctor Who. Now, we have looked at this before, but I expect that people listening to this are wondering, why should I care about this? What is it? What's this got to do with me? I'm concerned with politics or things on other levels, and not stupid television shows made for kids. But I would ask those people to consider here that yes, this is a television show made for kids. And maybe that's why people with some pretty bad ideas have gone to such extraordinary efforts to get control of it and to drive basically decent, well-adjusted, normal people away so that they stop being thorns in the side for a very deliberate agenda, which is being played out with the full cooperation of the good old forced ethics and diversity BBC. And we like the BBC so ever so much, don't we, Paul?
Oh, tell me about it, especially after yesterday, more of their rubbish. But the thing is, the bottom line is it's that same thing. Doctor Who is a very intelligent, strong character, and he's a white male. And that is the prime target for these people. They're taking out all these, whether it's Luke Skywalker, Doctor Who, Mad Max, any of these people, they need to muzzle them or transfer them. And that's it. It's not that, I've said this before in other shows, it's not that we as men, any men, reject strong female figures. In fact, most men fantasize about strong female figures like anyone else does. but it's when they're used to replace and to put down other male characters. That's the issue.
If anybody watches the science fiction show The Expanse, which is currently airing, the Bobby Draper Martian Marine character, now that's a strong female character, but that show in particular is very good at showing people being strong without needing to make any account of their sexuality or their race. There's no in a show like The Expanse, there's no privileges or special compensations made. It's just all played straight, and characters are who they are, and that's all really anybody ever wanted.
Yeah, of course. No one really cared. When you're watching a good film, you're not really thinking that way. It's just when you can see political subversion in a program constantly thrown at you, it becomes so annoying. You no longer enjoy it. You think, will you get out my face with this stuff? Because it just gets in the way of embracing the story and the whole thing about it.
Also, with what you've said there, Paul, about women or people of colour playing the Doctor, I think it's fair to say that the Doctor Who fan base is an imaginative fan base. Yeah. And I don't think it's the issue that those things, although some people are dead set against them, I don't think it's an issue that the fan base has been against those things or thinks those things are impossible. But I think it's more of a question of where is the show coming from when it's doing this?
Yeah. Well, you yourself were very open-minded when you came on the show originally with this. You were actually saying, no, this is an interesting idea, and you were very open-minded to it. So it's not as if you entered in with this with a closed mind. So we've got that on our show.
It was because I'm a creative writing person myself, Paul, and I can imagine how a female or person of colour Doctor could work. And I don't think these things are barriers, but I think it's about playing the audience straight. And I think that particular is what this era of the show, over the last series and the series now showing with the showrunner Chris Chibnall, I think this is especially what the show has not done. You see, those not watching it, which is a lot of people not watching it, because the viewing figures are absolutely at the bottom at the moment. I think what people watching it won't know is that last weekend's episode, which is episode 5 of series 12, that's halfway. We only make 10 these days. They actually did produce a new Doctor as part of a plot, and this new Doctor is a female of colour. She's played by an actor called Joe Martin. Now, as far as it goes, as a Doctor Who viewer, Joe Martin's performance in 5 minutes nailed the Doctor in a way that Jodie Whittaker hasn't been able to do in 15 episodes plus 17 episodes in a year and a half. So there is something of a shock factor here, because these people making the show, they're making the show really badly, but they also know how to make the show well. So I'm kind of thinking, you see, if this was Stephen Moffat and he was still in charge of Doctor Who, he spoke about casting decisions and a female Doctor. And he actually is on record in an interview at some convention or other, actually saying that he did not want a female Doctor just for the sake of a tokenism, just for the sake of a nod to feminism. Probably why we didn't like him that much, maybe. But he wanted a female Doctor because it was a female actor who showed that they were the best person to play the Doctor at that time. Now, if that philosophy had been taken, and if there was an interview process, back when Peter Capaldi was leaving the part, and Joe Martin and Jodie Whittaker were in a fair interview for the part, audition for the part, and Joe Martin got the part 18 months ago. And the show had simply played it straight and said, this is who the Doctor is now, I don't think we'd be where we are today. I don't think the show with ratings would be in the toilet. I don't think the fandom would be split. I don't think we would have these problems with this chronic cyberbullying. I think all of this comes from the bad casting and bad faith with which, for the first time I've ever seen, a television show production has actively gone out basically to drive a good chunk of its audience away. It's extraordinary to see these things happening. And this question of this bad faith, this agenda behind what's going on, some fans sense it, some fans don't. I think at the moment some fans don't want to sense it, but it's definitely there. At least as in our vision it is. And that's part of why we've taken a stand and entered this community to launch the Not My Doctor Who campaign. How's that going across to you so far, Paul? Any questions?
Well, I mean, what you're doing with this campaign is really interesting, and that's what I like what you do, because you do really get stuck in and sort of and provoke these things. So you hear more, you get reactions from people more, and you can learn more about it. But I mean, it's just across the spectrum now. I do think we have seen a little bit of a react. I mean, we've seen it with Ricky Gervais and a couple other sort of celebs out there that are starting to speak out and to point out this sort of hypocrisy and this ideology in Hollywood and stuff. So we're seeing a reaction, and I think it's because of people like yourself going out there prodding it, and podcasters like me talking about it and stuff like that, and people are relating to it because we're here. We like Hollywood and we like these films because we like to be entertained, and it's inspirational. Art is inspirational. And what we're seeing it not become entertainment, it's becoming like indoctrination. And people are starting to turn their noses up.
Interesting what you're saying there, Paul. I mean, the fundamental importance of story in our sense of self cannot be understated.
Yeah.
It is something that most people perhaps never think about, but underlying our very sense of how things are, why they should be, and who we are, and what we stand for, underpinning all of that is story. So it's long been understood that, but if you can gain influence of the stories that go into children's minds, you can shape the adults those children become. And this is why when you get these agendas, who for their own reasons believe they have the right to take control of something and to shape the future thinking of children, I think that's everybody's concern. It's everybody's concern. And when it comes to the Golden Globes, wasn't Ricky Gervais absolutely devastating? And
it's hilarious as well.
Many of us who've been campaigning on the wider field of sort of Pedogate, Pedowood, and these areas, the Weinstein situation, the Epstein situation, that was a fantastic breakthrough. But, at the same time, I suspect I couldn't really be more different than Ricky Gervais, certainly in terms of political worldview. Yeah. So we find allies in strange places all over on this journey, Paul. But that was a world-shifting event. That really was a world-shifting event. And, of course, President Trump's impeachment is coming to a very rapid close now. So, it's going to get interesting the next few months. This Weinstein thing, this is also interesting from the point of view of Not My Doctor Who. Because with Rose McGowan and Weinstein and the casting couch and the allegations of what goes on inside the industry, and there are many commentators out there, especially it feels like Comicgate, who kind of tend to come into the rough end of this, who have seen how collecting allegations of abuse has allowed, especially quite radical feminists, to gain increasing power within the industry, or at least it did. It's probably peaked around 2016. When the Ghostbusters 2016 came out. Oh, yeah. Which, of course, that was before Donald Trump was elected. So in the summer, when that film was about to hit the cinemas, the mainstream media hype of it was in the overdrive extreme, to the point that they were kind of saying, you're a bad person who likes Donald Trump if you don't come to see this film. Well, the result was the film flopped hard because audiences don't like being told what to think.
Yeah.
And, while this woke agenda has played out in the cinema releases of the last 4 years, we are seeing that it, slowly, political philosophy makes the bad stories. Oh, yeah. When you put the ideology above the storytelling, when good story should always be led by good characterisation. It's quite inevitable that audiences find it hollow and unsatisfying and reject it. And the more they reject it, of course, the angrier the extremists making it get. So this does also connect to what's been going on inside the Doctor Who office and the allegations or the insinuations that the feminists themselves were making a couple of years ago when they were actively advocating for people to come to them with their Me Too stories. What happened to all that dirt they gathered, Paul?
Absolutely nothing.
And they don't like us asking that question very much at all. It's getting quite embarrassing for them.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased about that.
I mean, what were your views on in general again? I mean, this situation with Lawrence Fox, who had a big bit of attention on him because of what he said on the Question Time. Now, the thing is, a lot of people might say, well, he's releasing a record, he's doing that, he just wants publicity. But either way, it shows that there's that audience that are getting fed up, whether he's genuine or not. He's either genuine or he knows there's a lot of people who will support him for saying this, meaning that somehow it's got to react, isn't it? When the audience are basically saying, screw you, we want our Hollywood back, we want our entertainment back to how it used to be.
I think that there's no doubt that Mr. Lawrence Fox is genuine as far as it goes. I think he represents the kind of person who's just had to shut up for too long.
Yeah.
And has had to listen to all this stuff, rolling their eyes inside, trying to get the paycheck done as a jobbing actor. Doesn't really want the trouble per se, but I think when he was put on the spot by that plant, I mean, she was a total BBC plant. She was an expert SJW lecturer from Manchester, I believe.
Well, she had this smirk on her face, didn't she?
Just happened to be in the audience that night. Come on, pull the other one.
She just had this smirk on her face, as in like, I'm gonna.
I know. It's also knowing. I mean, we're supposed to not see through it. I mean, who do they think they're kidding? At this point, everyone's rumbled them.
Yeah.
But that's the BBC. They wanted to. And that says a lot, doesn't it? It's the BBC who wanted to inject racism into that debate.
Mm.
Yeah, it wasn't the audience, not the real audience anyway, but the BBC in collusion with their plan. So let's talk about how everyone's racist again, about Harry and Meghan again. Oh, God, that's died down quick, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, who knows what's behind closed doors, but obviously the public have a strong opinion on her. And it's not as if there's unfounded reasons for that. It's not as if it's just plucked from thin air. She's fallen out. The 500 million pounds spent on dresses, or no? You're in that position. If you're in that position and you split up two families in the space of 1 or 2 years, there's something going on. There's reason for critics. Don't get me. It does annoy me. Our media. I do not support our mainstream media. I think for most of the time they're arseholes. And particularly people like the Royals and that kind of thing. So I totally sympathise, and I think they're scoundrels. But in the royal family, what happened. It. She's intelligent. She's not stupid. She knew exactly what she was getting involved with. And,
I'm sure that she did. I mean, back to what you were saying about Lawrence Fox. I am Lawrence Fox. At least this week, I am, Paul.
Right.
I did the most outrageous thing, you see, and I got myself into quite a lot of trouble, and I got a lot of mentions on Twitter, much more than I normally get. Let's put it that way. Either inferring that A, I must be a racist, or B, racially abusing me.
Yeah.
On the basis of my name and my characteristic. So it's been an interesting week. Now, this is what I actually did. I mentioned that there's a new female person of colour doctor introduced to the show last week, played by Jo Martin. So because I genuinely thought she was very good with her acting, as much as I'm very suspicious by what's going on with the motivations behind the script, I've got no problem with the actor and their acting, you see. So I thought, well, I'll go and say that. So I wrote this tweet out on her timeline. I said, at Real Jo Martin, I represent Not My Doctor Who. We have some issues with the production at the moment. We have no issues at all with your acting skills. You are truly great professional. While we are alarmed by the agenda behind messing with our core canon, our respect to your performance. So, look, Nothing racist or nasty in that whatsoever. It's just honest. I'm just saying where I'm coming from. I'm saying what point of view I represent. I'm congratulating an actor on their performance.
Yeah.
Can you see a problem with that tweet?
No, not at all.
Neither can most sane people I present it to. But you would not believe what came pouring my way, mostly by triggered people making rash conclusions based on my family name. So this says a lot about how those who pretend to hold these virtues of being anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-discriminatory, this and that and the other, they're the first ones to reach for the labels.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to have kind of been able to expose that about the Doctor Who fan base, because this is instrumental to how ordinary people have been driven out of talking about this show online by this deliberate and purposeful targeting. Of course, it doesn't work on me, does it, Paul?
Well, the thing is, to raise another person up here now, recently we've had Alistair Stewart, who was at the ITV. Now, don't get me wrong, I normally don't support these type of people because they're normally the worst kind of woke people there are anyway, that will come down on anyone else for not being politically correct. But anyhow, he lost. I don't know much about him, but he lost his job for quoting a Shakespeare quote to this mixed race guy he was debating, I think, on Twitter. And he quoted, I think it mentioned something about a chimp or something in this long quote, which had nothing to do with race whatsoever. He lost his job.
Now, come on, Paul. You can't expect Twitter moderators to have read Shakespeare now, can you?
Oh, exactly, yeah. But you know what I mean? And they say we're institutionally racist. I said, well, perhaps they're right. Perhaps it is institutionally anti-white or anti any white person who says anything that resembles talking about race will lose their job. Because that's where we're at the moment.
You know me, Paul. You know exactly where I've come from on the issue of race for many, many years.
Yeah.
You know, but this is a holographic reality. It's all a vibrational illusion, people. Yeah, and that while we could choose to make race part of us, we do not have to be enslaved by it.
Mm. Oh, I agree. But on a spiritual level, I'm with you.
I know no more racist people than the people who want to keep people stuck in one place in society, in one position in society, based on what they think is right for their race and characteristics. And it's interesting again with Doctor Who, because at the start of the series, Lenny Henry spoke out very strongly against the series. Mm. Did you catch that at the time?
I vaguely remember him saying something like
January,
that.
You know, it was a real angry rant, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair description. Now, I mean, to Doctor Who fans, they were kind of looking, well, Lenny's talking rubbish because we've got representation here. But I don't think that was really the point. Lenny Henry had just come off the Doctor Who production, and he was that angry about the way that Doctor Who has been representing people of colour, and I've got to ask myself why, you know. And I look at the actor Tosin Cole, who's in the current show, and how uncomfortable he's been looking doing some of the promotional stuff. It reminds me greatly of John Boyega, who of course is another person of colour actor who was just in the Star Wars trilogy. And he's turned round, having completed his contract with Star Wars Rise of the Star, Episode 9, Rise of the Skywalker. He's now feels free to say, actually, he didn't think that trilogy was all that good.
Yeah. Which
is very radical, considering that when Last Jedi was out, you know, you would get executed on Twitter for daring to say that. You know, the big organised mobs going around. So very much the same situation. And I think we're heading for the same breakthrough. But I wonder what it is that Lenny Henry saw behind the scenes. And it makes me think of what we call the white saviour syndrome.
Yeah.
Where, you know, often the trendiest people, the most woke on and right people, and the most racist people are the people who come through the university system and they think that they are the arbiters of morality in society, and they think they know what's right for minorities because they've got the right social theories and they go to the right dinner parties, you know, and you know, they end up developing white saviour complex.
Yeah.
Where they sacrifice themselves almost on the altar of race politics, race identity politics, just to show how virtuous they
Absolutely.
are.
I mean, they're the sort of the white people that do this sort of like the identity politics. Most of them are very privileged themselves, so they have guilt privilege, because they're so privileged they feel guilty.
I think of Chris Chibnall. You see.
So then what they don't understand is that the majority of white people aren't privileged like they are. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this stupid derogatory term, white privilege, which is basically saying white people aren't allowed to dominate a continent.
This ideology, who makes sure that this ideology gets into the university textbooks? Who makes sure it's on the manifesto, on the syllabus? Yeah, who's doing that? And when we track that back, we find that it's the wealthiest people on the planet are ensuring that these social movements are disseminated and cause their disruption effect to a traditional society. It's even called the disruption tactic.
And the only way it will work, the only way that this woke thing will work, is if the whole planet do it at the same time together. Because what's going to happen is, even if they win, they're going to convert Europe and America into this big woke, multicultural, multi-everything, no identity, no this big community, and then the rest of the world, who vastly populate us, are just going to go and soak it all up, and then it won't exist anymore anyway. So it's
the talk is of white privilege as reasons to ever increasingly increase the amount of non-white privilege. But at the end of the day, we're only going to destabilise society in different ways, and in different ways multiple times all at once, which of course is what's happening. Because white power scares people who are not white, and black power scares people who are not black.
Absolutely.
And it's by keeping us divided and pushing us into these categories that the establishment, the plutocratic elite, the global elite, that they keep us fighting against each other, so that we don't turn around and get a better deal out of them, because they're the ones who actually have all the privilege and have all the wealth,
and they're stirring it all up.
Away with it.
Well,
while we fight in their game.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, look at these grooming gangs, for example. Now, there's two layers of ignorance with this. Now, on one hand, you could say, well, there's people that are just ignoring it and saying, you're just being racist, ignoring it. They're stupid because they're not recognising there is a racist problem there. Then on the other end of the scale, the nationalist types, they're saying, look what they're doing to us. Ask yourself this: who's letting these people come here and do this? They're allowing that bad people exist in all walks of life. They do bad things if they know they can get away with it. So these people are doing bad things, these grooming gangs, because they know they can get away with it. Who's letting them get away with it? That's the people that let these people into the country and do that. Then they're smart, calculating people. They're not idiots. They know they're going to do this.
Situation like that. We're trying to understand, how did this happen? Why did this happen? We've basically got two positions we can take. The first is cock up. The second is conspiracy. So now it's known as a fact, and it's not even a disputed fact anymore. It's an official fact. It's no longer a Tommy Robinson claim. It's a fact. Yeah. Yes.
Although some still deny it, but
they deliberately did not prosecute these people because of fears of the effect of being seen to be racist. Yeah. So now we have to get into, well, was that a weakness? Was that a compromise? Was that a cock-up? Was that a failure? Or was it something else? Yeah, and neither thought is particularly comforting. But on the one hand, you've got, we've got this problem in a community, but we can't tell the truth about it because we're afraid of what the anger would do if that was unleashed and how that would affect race relations. I mean, that's the positive argument for it that they might have tried to make. We don't agree with it, but we might have tried to make it. But then you do have this other one, which is, why are these communities being kept in a state of chaos? Who can benefit from that? And those don't have good answers at all. And it's kind of macrocosm to a microcosm. What we see in general society happens in the smaller areas of it. And yes, it applies right now to this television program, Doctor Who. And the implicit racism in how it's using race to push an agenda for its own reason against an audience which actually if it was played straight with, the audience would have embraced a well played Doctor, whoever played that part. But to give us what appears to be maybe even deliberately have given us a poorly played white female Doctor, to then have a very well played black female Doctor come in, 18 months in. It feels a little bit psyopsy. Can you see where I'm coming from, Paul?
Oh yeah, it's
it feels like this is a deliberate plan to destabilize the audience's emotions, to confuse them, and maybe to get them to accept something that they wouldn't have accepted before. And I think in the fan base right now, the biggest concern is to do with this new incarnation of the Doctor. As might make sense, there is an order to the Doctor's lives, the Doctor's regenerations. So from the first Doctor, William Hartnell, second Patrick Troughton, third John Pertwee, fourth Tom Baker, and so forth. There's a lineage, one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Now, in this current plot, they have deliberately placed this new Doctor not in the future, but in the Doctor's past. But a Doctor that the current Doctor has no memory of at all. So the concern is that the current writers are going to place their new person of colour female Doctor before William Hartnell, and say that there was a whole line of female Doctors before the show even started.
What a wipeout.
And then use that basically to destroy the canon of the show.
Yeah, and of course, this is what I mentioned in previous shows. A lot of people say, "Oh, grow up! It's just a TV show." It's like, no, you get with it, because this is what you call brainwashing and getting into young men's subconscious.
Where is this positive figure that had such a positive influence on young men's lives, on young boys? Yeah. And the values
it goes into their subconsciousness. It makes
boys not allowed to have positive male role.
Not at all. Not at all. They're not. And that's the whole idea of it. It's like,
The biggest problem with the current version of the show is that it's making it so instead of creating a new character for women, by creating this ideological tug of war over this long-established character, not only do they risk destroying what made the show worth watching in the first place, but also, it kind of shows the creative bankruptcy of these people. And that when you're using current trendy politics to fill in for bad script writing, you can only get so far before you're rumbled. And I think the show is well and truly at rumble point now. Mm. However, the downside is that without a significant pushback, this is just going to continue. Maybe there'll be a 13th season, maybe even one or two more after that at tops. And the show will be shut down, it will come to an end, and it's lost for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways, let these people keep working. What they're doing is waking people up to their agenda, and people are turning against it. So by all means, it's a shame if you're a Doctor Who fan and you're watching it be shat on. Likewise with Star Wars and all these things where these PC warriors are just completely politicizing it and disrespecting the universes of the reproductions that they're doing. Let them carry on. They're certainly waking people up.
I've come to this in a very interesting position, you see, Paul, because I am not a Doctor Who personality per se. Mm. I don't have a YouTube channel. I don't talk only about the Doctor Who programme. Before a year ago, I never talked about the show online. And of course, with Aslan's Army, I'm involved in so much more campaigning on issues that have nothing to do with Doctor Who, and actually should have nothing to do with Doctor Who. But so it's meant that I'm coming in very much as an outsider. And we have certainly made a big splash because I'm prepared to go and say boo to people in their faces in a way that others, frankly, aren't. But we also need to understand that the Doctor Who community even those who have problems with the show, some of these people with some of their YouTube channels and so forth, they've been slowly building those channels up for years. Thousands of hours making these videos, just not nothing to do with politics, just about the show itself. Commenting about an episode, looking into how it was made, and all of these things that fans normally do. And then for them to have a petition like this, it's very hard for them to actually come out and support it, Paul. There's a significant chilling effect, because what's going to happen afterwards? And what if they upset and split their audience? So that's been a factor which is interesting to discover in this, in that, it's not that easy to get a community to stand up for itself, even when it really needs to.
Yeah.
So to go from an info warrior to an environment with, with sci-fi geeks, I can't expect them to go out and be soldiers, because they're not. But what I can do is encourage them as best as I can. And, we believe that we don't need the big channels to support us because we're about the audience. But at the same time, anybody out there who is against the agenda being pushed through entertainment, who is concerned about issues like cyberbullying and the way that some quite toxic ideologies are pushing them at the children, who are against Hollywood and the rottenness which has gone on there and want that exposed. Who also are against the BBC, because the BBC's a biased fake news gits who've managed to annoy the entire nation. And isn't it good to see Boris is definitely taking action against the TV licence, Paul?
Let's hope it's not just gesturing. Let's hope he's really going to.
There's something real about this one. Yeah. So, who knows? In a year's time, it may not be a BBC left to make Doctor Who. I wouldn't say it was impossible in the current mood. But, for all of those reasons, this campaign deserves support, and we're running it for as long as Series 12 is on the air, plus another couple of weeks. So, this campaign's active from now until the middle of March, at which we'll then close it, and we'll put together a report, and we'll see what action we've managed to get, and then further campaigns can take this further forward.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of making a limited but significant contribution, because after that I don't intend to be doing more in this field, at least not for a while. This is for the fan base of Doctor Who, to sort of say, look, we really have had enough being bullied like this and being pushed around like this, and we want to stand up and do something, and for everybody else who feels that they can join them. And the good news is that we have had a heck of a lot of people look. So we have now made sure that there is an option. It's a real option, and it exists. And we've been getting out there, so we can now say that there is a voice for these views in the fan base, which were driven out and drowned out back in Series 12. So on those two fronts alone, we've already made significant progress. But there's a lot more to do. We have 165 signatures at the moment. I would like to see us get, and I believe that actually, if we can continue to inspire people over the next month, I think we can get that significantly higher, at least one extra zero on it. Now is a good time to come and respond to this call for action. Right.
Yeah. I mean, what was your view on the Star Wars latest film? Just to touch on that.
I didn't even watch it, Paul. I'll give you an honest answer there. I said I wasn't going to watch it, and I didn't. Yeah. I think it's commonly accepted to have been a failure. I haven't looked at the exact numbers on it, but I believe it made less than Rogue One. But it was interesting because it showed clear evidence of a course correction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
This is where it gets really ironic here, you see, Paul, is that when you pander to one group, but then try to come back towards the middle, you really annoy the group you've been pandering, because you're taking all their sweets away.
Like you were doing everything we wanted.
Yes, sorry, Paul.
I was just saying that you were doing everything you wanted, and now you're not giving us everything we wanted. It's that spoiled brats.
That's it exactly. And so while the SJW contingent could not have been happy with The Last Jedi, it's our film, when it comes to Rise of Skywalker, they've been really quite upset. And they've been especially upset because they're shipping Reylo fantasies. That is where they put the character Rey and the character Kylo Ren into a romantic relationship. Yeah, well, okay, bit more than that. A very romantic relationship. You know what shipping is. So they were very upset that their shipping fantasies were dashed and came to nothing. And again, how like Doctor Who that is, with the Phasmin fantasies, which have been all about shipping the Jodie Whittaker Doctor with the Yasmin Khan character, you know. But again, you know, that's another thing that Doctor Who fans are, at least some Doctor Who fans are against, you know, because they recognise that the Doctor is effectively an immortal, timeless being, and that for the Doctor to have an intimate relationship with a human being would be so mismatched. It kind of has a similar feel to child abuse. We don't want to see the Doctor having sexual relationships with human beings and companions. That cheapens and diminishes the character.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's of course is part of the Star Wars as well, isn't it? Because, you know, these shipping fantasies being imposed on fiction. I mean, it all started with the Twilight stuff back in the vampire days. And it's interesting that Twilight started off as a sex novel. It was actually written as a sex novel originally, as a fan fiction on the internet, and then it got sort of rewritten into the successful vampire series. It's funny how it goes around in the world of popular culture.
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, I thought they were meant to be the creative ones. You know, they're the ones dominating the arts and stuff. I thought they were the creative people. I mean, you look at it in comedy now. Comedy has got really rubbish, and you're getting underground scenes that are exploding now, like Comedy Unleashed. If anyone's checked that out on YouTube, you get some fantastic comedians there. Not particularly left-wing or right-wing, probably more leaning right than more pro-nationalist, but they're just so fed up with the mainstream politically correct narrative holding comedians back. You're getting these underground scenes that are exploding now. I mean, this Comedy Unleashed is really doing well.
When people have got solidified, radicalized, closed minds, and they don't want to see and they don't want to listen, then they limit themselves as creatives.
Yeah.
Because to be creative is to be open to the world completely. You know, as a writer, I might consider myself to be a good person, but if I want to write a convincing villain, I have to be open to the mindset of villainy, don't I? In order to create a convincing villain to amuse my audience. Yeah. You know? And this closed-mindedness limits creativity a great deal.
Well, you saw that bit head on with the Joker, didn't you?
When every character has to tick this box and that box and everything else, and then they get it unstuck. I mean, back in Doctor Who, in the Dalek special from not this New Year, the one before, they came up stuck on this kind of tokenism, because they had a guy on the phone, and he was supposed to be the security guard where this part of the Dalek was coming for was being kept. Yeah. So he's just on the phone to his boyfriend. He's talking about going to the club with my boyfriend. And then the Dalek comes in and shoots him dead. You know, so he's on screen for 30 seconds. You know, and as far as the BBC goes, that scene ticked its box, you see, because it included a gay character. Yeah. But then, as far as the internet was concerned, the BBC must have an issue with gays, because he's executing gays. So this is how nonsensical it gets. Yeah. You know, how do you show transness in a character?
Yeah, well, the thing is, the joke had done so well because of what you're saying. It had like that sort of perspective on these kind of villain type sort of characters. But, you know, when they done that with the Joker, you had things like the Guardian attacking it because it was so raw and real. This Joker character related to so much, related to the dark side of human nature at the moment that we're seeing a lot out there, and almost warmed people to it in a sympathetic way. And the Guardian and others hated it. The woke brigade, not all of them, but a lot of them did.
The last time I was on, I believe, you know, I mean, Joker was a real crushing blow to this whole intersectional ideology, but I've also mentioned that Joker is a fantastic piece of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a dark mirror, you know, so people see what they themselves project into it. I find it fascinating how different people see completely different films when we look at Joker.
Yeah.
Because as an open-minded philosopher who is able to extend to an idea of a concept of maybe, I get to see quite a bit more of what's going on than somebody who decides, well, this is what it is and that's that. And how people lead themselves along. It's fascinating. But, of course, on an ethical standpoint, that is why I resist people who manipulate people without their understanding and consent. Because to me, it's simply ethically wrong. And that's the biggest difference to me, Paul, about what Doctor Who is now to what Doctor Who was then. Because, Doctor Who, it really had a special kind of magic. For many years I've been a Doctor Who fan, Doctor Who was a unifying thing in my life. You didn't get judged for watching Doctor Who. You got embraced instead. Anyone could watch Doctor Who. There's always been a little bit of liberal-mindedness in there, but it was never going out of its way to change people. It was about inspiring people instead. Yeah. And that's the huge difference now. Is that what we've got now is so broken. It is so dysfunctional, and it only cares for itself and its own agenda. It doesn't love the audience anymore. It doesn't even care about the audience anymore. It's treating the audience with contempt, and it's also, it's got its own plan for the ideas it wants to get into the minds of the audience's children. And it has to come a point where you go, by what right is this being done, especially on a publicly funded service like the BBC? Yeah. So Not My Doctor Who is here for you. Sign and share that petition, people. Yeah,
I mean, and maybe this is a good sign for you, all you young men and women out there, to get extra creative and challenge this kind of ideology and take care of the future.
I think so too, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the odds are slim that we're really going to get the BBT to shift, but we might, and there's a lot more that we can do, even if ultimately Series 13 does go ahead and we refuse to change course. And I think that quite a few of us long-standing Doctor Who fans are starting to see that we do have creative talents, and the answer to what's being done to our beloved franchise is to go and make new franchises which are even better. And I'm actually working on some ideas, so we'll see how that goes.
You never know. Well, we are just about around that time now. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
I just always appreciate having a chance to get in front of THA.
Yeah, we love you having on, mate.
This is an active campaign. It's an ongoing situation. I think we may perhaps have one more THA about this in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
I'll probably be done with this topic for a while.
I haven't been getting a lot of random guests on the show. I've been sort of in tick over mode at the moment. But you're great because you're kind of part of the team, THA team. Yeah. You've done some interviews with me, and it's just great to have you back on to update on this stuff. And we'll carry on doing that regardless.
Other matters to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right now, while Doctor Who is on the air and there's a chance to grab the public's attention, then this has been the time to run this campaign, and I'm very happy to be doing with it, and I'm going to be very excited to see where it ends up.
Brilliant. We'll be speaking to you soon, and I've got some other guests out there that are lined up. They'll be on soon for you listeners out there. Hopefully enjoy that, and thanks for listening again.
Everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Happy Brexit. We are a free land at last.
Yep. Some might not be pleased with that, but I'm sure they get used to it. Just let's all crack on. Let's all crack on and move forward.
Freedom is scary when people aren't used to it, but we'll help them get over it, won't we?
We are all Brits. We are all Brits. Let's remember that.
Together.
Let's remember that.
One.
Yeah.
And patriots have no skin colour.
Well, that's absolutely, yeah. And Rome agreed with that as well, I might add.
Bye. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care, guys. Speak to you soon. Bye.